Okay, so what I've built here is sort of a basic minimum working example of how to put a sort of password protection behind pages on your website. It uses SQL tables and PHP, and I apologize, I'm not going to get all my expressions correct. I'm still learning this. So I've posted a file folder on GitHub, and let's go ahead and open that folder. And this pulls up this basic minimum working example. If you need to see the file structure, I've got a handout for that. So the includes file is where we put our basic communication with the database. And this part's really important for security reasons. We keep the includes folder outside of the public HTML. And the reason why we do that is the config file contains your database username and password, and you want this somewhere where it can't be served up to somebody who's accessing the website. So this is stored on the I guess the server side, and this is accessible by anybody calling on the website. So we've got our config file, and this is where you will put in your basic data about the database, and we'll talk about how we create that in just a second. Then we go ahead and this starts what's called a session, and once there's a log off button that will stop the session. So if we go into the database here, you can see this pulls on that config file, and then it goes ahead, and I'm not quite sure. I don't know exactly what's happening with SQL, but you can see this is calling up to the database, and it's going to prepare things appropriately to get table information, to prepare variables to put into the table, to pull variables out of the table, or pull entries out of the table, etc. So that part might be new if you haven't worked with PHP and you haven't worked with these SQL databases before. So then we've got, this is an index or a basic home, and here you can see this is something that I mentioned before. Because of our basic file structure, let me pull that up, our basic file structure, the index is sitting in the public HTML. This is your home page essentially. But when we go to the index, this, without defining the path, tells you to step up to the one folder and then go into the includes folder and get your Dropbox, your database PHP. Here we have the commands for then preparing to this sort of prepares to enter the information into the database that it gathers from this form right here, and then when you click the login button, it will I guess I'll just say appropriately pair things. Okay, so there's this is once you've created an account, you go to the index page which has our login, and this communicates with the database appropriately with that PHP language. Okay, we have a register page, so this will be for first-time users, and this does the same thing in that it communicates with the database. It prepares to put information into it. It does have the password hash. I would assume everyone knows that you want to hash your passwords. I'm not pretending to understand everything about security here, but this is the most, this is essential if you're going to be storing somebody's password in your database. Okay, so then once the so when a user logs in, notice that we get the username, and when they hit submit, it takes them to the password protected page once the form is submitted. And so if we go look, we've got a password protected page. You can see that we've got this again. Every page that needs this information, it's up top here, but we don't have a explicit path to the includes file. And here you can see that if you didn't execute, if you didn't get through the login, if we didn't pick up your user ID, then you're automatically kicked out of this page before the page ever loads. Then you have the option to log out. You can either, if you don't click this log out, you could close the browser window. My guess is sometimes that might cause problems, I'm not sure. But if you click on the log out button, you can see here is the destroy the session, and it closes out that session that was started earlier. Okay, so that's the, and again, I'm not 100% comfortable with this, but that's the basic overview of how we do the login procedures. In this folder, I've created I've given a SQL command to go ahead and create the database, and that will, the names on this, the names of the variables in here, user ID, password hash, username, those all match with the relevant pulls or inserts that we do with the database elsewhere through here. Okay, so that's what's included in the GitHub, and if I can't get it into GitHub correctly, I'll just have these files accessible. If you have to build the structure from your own, I've got that link for that. Okay, the next thing is we need, if you want to do this all locally, if you want to check this locally, you're not doing it on a hosting site, we need something called XAMPP. There's probably plenty of other programs that will do this, but XAMPP allows you essentially to run PHP commands on your local site and interact with the databases correctly. Again, I hope I'm probably misstating some of these things, but we're giving it our best shot. So there are plenty of YouTube videos out there about how to install XAMPP, so I'm not going to go through that, but I'll go ahead and pull it up. I've already got it installed, so we'll pull it up here. So this is the XAMPP control panel for at least the version I have. There are ways to, there are probably ways to bash this from, to open things up on your own. I'm not quite sure. So, oops, it looks like I had these already started. Normally these would be stopped. So you come in, and I'm not sure. I know I need MySQL on. I always turn on Apache too. I'm pretty sure I need both of those. Again, this is something I'm not very comfortable with. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and click admin here. I have some sort of cache issue that I can't figure out. Normally what you could do is you could just type into your web browser, you could just type localhost, and from there you can enter the PHP myadmin. And so this is what you get installed when you install that XAMPP. Okay, in here you can see it comes pre-built with some databases. I think the performance schema, PHP myadmin, MySQL, and information schema all came pre-built in this. You can see I have a database in here called MathGrader, and what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to create a new database. So we'll give the database a name. We'll call it this database, whatever you wish. So we'll go ahead and create it, and now you can see we have this database here. Okay. So the next thing we need to do, now that we've got this database created, is let's go ahead and build the appropriate SQL table. So that's where I've got the create table command here for you. And there's other ways to do this from a command line, but I'll just go to, I've got this GUI interface here, so I'll just click on the SQL, and this is where I'll create this tab. This gives the command create a table named users, and these are the columns that we're going to have in there, the headings of those columns, and then appropriate parameters on here. This is always a part of a SQL table. Well, I guess I shouldn't say that. I don't know that for a fact, but for this is the variable that's sort of automatically created, and it counts the username starting out. So the first user would have user ID, I assume 1, maybe 0, and then incrementally upward by integers. And then here's your place to save the username. It can't be empty, and it has to be unique. So if somebody tries to create a username that already exists, it stops it. And then here's the, rather than just storing whatever they type as the password, this is that password hash command. I don't pretend to know how all of that works, but I'm pretty sure this is the basic standard for doing this. And you can't leave the password empty. It has to have something in it. In reality, you would want to put a lot of other parameters on here, like maybe the password has to be 5 digits, or 5 characters in length, maybe it has to have some digits, some uppercase, lowercase. That's where you could put those sorts of parameters on here. Okay, so we've entered in this command, and then all we have to do to create the database table is click go, and we get this return that the table was created. And sure enough, if you look over here in this database, the user's table was built. There's other ways to do this, but this SQL command seem like the best way to do it, and I don't know, ChatGPT can help you with those. Okay. So now that we've got our database, our user table created, let's go back to, this is the next thing we have to do. We got to go back to the config file. So the only thing we have to change in this to get this working example is in the config file, you want to go ahead and amend anything that's going to be talking to the database that you created. So if you're using this locally on the local MyPHP admin, you definitely have localhost. But usually when you put this, if you're working with these databases in a hosting service, it's still localhost, but you'll want to check with your hosting service. Then the database name is what we just created, and we called it, I think we called it this database. The next thing is the database user. So usually when you're using a hosting site, you won't have any control over the structure of what the databases might initially look like. So a lot of times it might be something like U for user, I think, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you only get to pick part of that database name. And the same thing for your database user, you only get to pick part of it. But for us, because we're running this locally, we can put whatever name we wish here. And then I have a little comment here, and this is where I got into some trouble because I was trying to create an account. It works best if you don't create a data, I don't know, I guess you can do this, but for ease of the first time through, don't create a database user in the local MyPHP admin, and instead leave this as root for the user. I assume that's kind of like an admin that can access anything. Again, I'm probably saying some things wrong here, but I'm giving it my best. And then normally if this were a live site, you would have a password here, or maybe some way to call upon that password. But because we're running it locally, we'll go ahead and have that blank, and that works with the root that we have. Okay, so then I have to save this. So we'll save this config file, and I think that's it. Let's go ahead and give it a shot. Oh, and I'll just reiterate one more time. My understanding is that we've got this file structure set up so that even though that password is stored in the config, that will never be accessible to somebody calling upon the server, and only accessible on the server side of things. Okay, so now we'll go ahead and go back to that. We'll go back to the, well, let's pull this up here. And now we can actually go to our site. So I'll type in the, I need to mention this, I'm sorry. I have the, so I created XAMPP. I've got it stored on my G drive. There's my XAMPP file folder. When you install this, it comes with a file folder called htdocs, and I'm not quite sure what that stands for, but this is basically where anything you want to be able to communicate with the MyPHP admin, it needs to be in here. You can see I've got my existing site. I also have some other things that just end up getting stored here over time, but here's the directory, and I'll navigate into the index.php. Let's get that. I think the forward slash backslash get mixed up here, but that's okay. We'll just flip these around. And we didn't get it. Okay, I actually don't think we have a problem. I think this is a protection thing in our browser. You'll notice that running locally here, I have just the HTTP. And let's go in and put in the S there, even though it's not secure, or I haven't set that up. I'm not sure. I haven't set that up. So we'll hit this, and I was able to go directly because I've already done this once. Sometimes what you might get is a warning that says you can't go further, but then there's a little button that you can click and go ahead and go further, acknowledging that you're entering a site that's not secure. Okay, so this is now our index page that we built, and we can go ahead and create a user. Let's call him user1, and a password. Oops, and we try to log in. Of course, we can't because we haven't created the entry in the database yet. So we'll click the register here. Let's do the same thing, and we will now register. And we got a little message that it's been registered correctly, and we will return to the login site. And we're told we don't have a good password, and we're now taken to the login page that's only accessible because it checked to see whether we had a session that had a user ID assigned to it. The last thing probably just to show is that if we go back to the MyPHP admin, you can go look in there into this database that we created. There you can see the users. When these are small enough, you can see what you want to. As they get larger, you'd have to query for them. But here you can see that we have one row of data in this database. There's the automatically indexed number 1. This is the first user. That's the user ID that gets appended. Make sure you have a user ID to be able to get to the password protected page. Here is the username that we created, and then there's our hashed password. My understanding is that it's very difficult to then figure out what the password is. I think that has something to do with factoring very, very large numbers. Okay. That's it. Hopefully this is helpful. You found it interesting, and otherwise, I'll see you in the next video.